of the exotic kind of anti-aging drugs, I know that you've kept metformin in despite whatever evidence has suggested that it may not be as great as it was once touted.
Yeah.
Above and beyond that, 17 alpha estradiol, which presumably has been essentially benign and unnoticeable in effects. Is there anything else that you've used that you can recall as far as anti-aging? I don't know.
Yeah. The things that have the largest effect size, the follistatin gene therapy that I did, mini circles. So they've got a plasmid for a follistatin gene therapy, which in our analysis ranked number 7 as the most powerful lifespan extension. It was over 30% in mice. And so I did the therapy on September 10th, and then 2 weeks later, my follistatin levels were up 160%. So the therapy did in fact have the effect. Now it's not editing the genes, it's just sitting inside the nucleus, and the production of follistatin increases. And
via the gene though? Okay.
Via the protein.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you have the effect.
So you're not modulating the follistatin gene expression at all?
Yeah, you're not changing the DNA.
Got it.
And so that one was cool because we have been trying to figure out gene therapy for over 2 years. And we had been looking at AAVs, and particular AAV9. But it's challenging because if you do that gene therapy, you can't turn it off.
Yeah.
So if something goes awry, there's no kill switch.
Right.
And so we didn't do gene therapy. Then we found this one. And so that was, I think, the highest ranking one we had done. And then I also did 100 million young Swedish bone marrow mesenchymal stem cells intravenous. That one's unknown because it's not certain if it stacks. So it's well indicated for inflammation and a bunch of other things. But someone like myself who's in pretty good health, we're not sure if it stacks, but that ranked number 34 on our list.
Yeah.
And then the other ones, the 17A-E2, I think that was, I forget where it ranks, but it's pretty high, like 13th to 14th. Rappa is pretty high. Oh, Rappa metformin ranks 10th as the highest
under the
study.
Gene therapy? That's crazy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because it was
like, what about the follistatin gene therapy is so attractive in humans specifically that it gets such a high ranking? Because I've, like, in the bodybuilding community, follistatin has been one of those things that always had such promise, but never actually did anything because of you'd administer it and supposedly it would just essentially be eliminated nearly instantly with how short of a half-life it was.
Sure.
So you would have to use this gene therapy to actually get it to work, was what we all thought and knew to be the case, but no one actually got it. But the clinical trial that I've seen on it in humans was not as impressive as I would have hoped for something that is hyped using like double muscle phenotype like cattle and the whippets and those like jack mice and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like, what have you seen in terms of actual impact to justify a number 7 on your thing? Because presumably it's body comp related.
Yeah. So we actually, I think this is maybe the interesting thing is we're looking at over 30 organs for effect. I know that's been primarily pegged at muscle.
Yeah.
We're looking at epigenetic age, speed of aging, inflammation. So we're looking at a whole bunch of different markers that people have used in the past. And it was, the effect size was huge on increased lifespan. And so what we're thinking is that there's possible effects in the body that just haven't been robustly measured. And so the company that's doing the gene therapy minicircle, they're doing many of these measurements. We're doing many more than anyone else. And so we'll see. I mean,
I've talked to the guy who, or at least the one who's the forefront spokesperson,
Mac.
Adil Khan, I think his name is. Yeah, I might be forgetting. He's from Canada, and he's on a podcast all the time.
Okay.
Am I misremembering his name?
Walter, Mac, Ryan, those are the 3 co-founders.
Oh, maybe he's the main MD behind it. I'm not sure. But anyway, he's often on the forefront talking about this. And perhaps I just haven't seen the podcast with the founders. But this thing, like, how much does it cost per shot? First of all, that's something because the ROI on it it's definitely there. All right, so we left off on follistatin gene therapy. So this is something that expectedly I'm piqued my interest as somebody who's seen over a decade plus now of people talking about this, and everyone's seen the Belgian blue double muscle phenotype cattle that are super jacked, or like the Mr. Olympia of cows, essentially. You have the whippets who are jacked. You have the mice that have, I forget if it's a gene deletion. I don't know if they use follistatin, but it was either way, a lot of the outcome sought was similar or overlapping enough to justify seeking if myostatin inhibition was worthwhile in humans.
Yeah.
So I've seen the phase 1 trial on this exact gene therapy, and there is markers of biological age that did go down, like you said. Lean body mass outcomes increased by 1.8 pounds of lean body mass with a drop in body fat of 0.8 pounds. Interesting thing though is, and this is, I guess, reflects that it's actually follistatin working, but we see it in the serum that it goes up, so we kind of know it's there, but increase in pre-diabetic looking markers. So it seems to be, it has like a adipose tissue insulin resistance inducing effect in literature in rodents, and it seems to play out in humans a little bit too, based on some of the negatives in that study too. So kudos to them for still putting it out there and letting people dissect it and whatnot. But to me, like the ROI for what I understand to be a $25,000 shot that's experimental, maybe you get, a similar outcome to taking creatine monohydrate or something. Like, how do I rationalize using this? Is it like, did you pay the $25K yourself, or was it complimentary, or like, how does a normal person think about something like this?
Yeah. What were the pre-diabetic markers that they were looking at?
I'm going to pull up the study. Let's see. Insulin went up, glucose went up, hemoglobin A1C went slightly up, leptin went up. Obviously, follistatin levels went way up, but that's not necessarily a marker of glucose utilization. But yeah, in general, it was, and then the lipid profile skewed. So LDL went up 8, HDL went up a bit. So it's not like it was super dramatic, but it's like there was a clear trend that was significant to actually show that there is something going on from the follistatin that may be worth consideration before, haphazardly assuming it's going to make you this jacked superhuman, which I think is what a lot of people think it's going to do. So I think realistic, I'm not saying it doesn't work, by the way. And the guys behind it, at least the one I've talked to, has been super forthcoming about all the data, knowing that I could, dissect it or whatever.
Yeah.
So kudos to him. Seems like a super nice guy. But yeah, to me, it's like the results are relatively unimpressive proportionally to what I've seen hyped up on social media, because I've seen this exact therapy been talked about. And even of your results, the only thing I've heard from you is your serum levels went up of follistatin. It's like, okay, I would expect such an outcome. Like, what else did you notice?
Yeah. So September 10th was the injection. So we're now end of January. So yeah, we're 4 months in. I just had a blood panel done 2 weeks ago, and all of the markers you talked about of glucose, A1C, lipids, insulin, they're all unmoved from my previous history. So we haven't seen any change in those. I have my next MRI, my whole body MRI for muscle and fat, and we're going to do a 6-month marker. So we'll see then. I also completed 2 speed of aging tests to see if that would happen over the past month. So the data is still coming in. So we haven't seen anything negative yet. Nothing's moved in the wrong direction. And I think we'll assess the other variables at the speed of aging. We'll get those tests back in a few weeks, and then muscle and fat. But yeah, I guess we have yet to prove any upside.
Yeah, the thing that's tough too is it's like, as much as you'd want to keep all factors the same, 4 months is a long time. Like, I think you've increased your calories by 250 or 300 since then too, which literally attenuated your need to be on TRT. So it's like, to compare a result from then to now and attribute anything to the follistatin gene therapy is just like hard for me to wrap my head around. So it's like, is it not just a useless experiment at that point? Or
Yeah, the caloric restriction increase was before.
Okay.
Yep. So that we feel like that one we accounted for the change in the bloods and other measurements with that. For the TRT, yeah, I went off. That could be a confound. We went off TRT
for sure.
in I think November, something like that.
Yeah. By the way, I'm not like poo-pooing the way you go about it.
Yeah,
It's just like I would have a hard time taking any sort of result seriously, given the velocity at which you have to proceed with your life accordingly and do the things you want to do.
Yeah.
So, like, I guess you could chalk it up to this is what happened. Here's the confounders and take from that what you will, kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And what my team does is, so we use these statistical models to try to isolate effect. So there are standard ways in pharma where you can say, we're going to go through this 15-step process and try to create a probability of prediction whether a given intervention can accommodate a certain thing. Because pharma has the same problem too, where you give a drug and you have these whole body effects you're looking at. And you're trying to isolate, can we say what this drug does do and what this drug doesn't do? So we use those same models to determine effect on our side. So it's not, I don't want there to be a perception that this haphazard approach, we're just throwing things. It's actually really rigorous from a statistical model perspective. And so yes, are there some things that cross and close and confound and make that hard? Yes. Also, it's the game we're playing and we're moving very fast, but we're also very rigorous from a stats perspective.
So typically when you replace, like, I know this isn't necessarily like an endocrine hormone, but when you do something that's, I don't know, body comp related or something like TRT, you'll have a target almost of here's what high-end production would look like for a 20-year-old Bryan, for example. Like, how do we even know what we're shooting for with follistatin, the dose proportional to the gene therapy? Like, what are we using as targets here?
From an outsider's perspective, what it may look like is we're throwing darts against the wall. We can't isolate anything, so therefore we don't know what's working. And our internal operations are very different than that in terms of the rigor the team has in terms of the scientific research. Like, for example, we did this, we recently started a few thousand person clinical study, self-experimentation study, I should say. And we went through with the group why we chose to have grapeseed extract as an ingredient in the stack. And the team presented a 4-page document with a complete comprehensive summary on everything that's ever been done on grapeseed extract as a intervention modality. And I think for many people's observation was it was the most extensive assessment they'd ever seen in their entire lives on whether an ingredient should be included in a given thing. And that's really the reality of the team, is the robustness we have. And this is partly our fault. We should share this more of like what goes in. And a lot of this is our own proprietary research, where we spent a lot of money devising this, basically the research that gives us confidence to do one thing over another thing. And so we share what the protocol is and we share my results, but we don't share the IP we built in terms of how to arrive. And so therefore people are left thinking this is darts against the wall. They don't know what they're doing. They can't separate anything. And so when you dive in on these things, typically with my team, like we've had several conversations where people come to the conversation and be like, I'm going to ruin you guys with all these points. And they usually walk away and say, okay, like much more robust and thorough than I ever thought and not what I perceived at all. Yeah. And so I think that I'm not the best person to make these arguments because I'm not the team. And specifically, I trust them, not myself, because I'm not the expert. But definitely, I think your points are valid. I understand your perspective, and it's entirely reasonable with what you're saying.
Anecdotally, have you seen anyone else try it that got reliable results that were controlled in a controlled setting to some extent?
With Follistatin?
Yeah.
The company's now done, I think, over 200. And their measurement panel, they have a protocol. Ours is much more robust. So I think the results are still emergent. I think the research supports a reason to be excited about it. But I think it is probably short of having answered all outstanding questions.
Okay. Yeah. It's like I don't really know what to make when it says something like extrinsic epigenetic age was an impressive minus 27.91 years. And it's like, I could nearly guarantee that person is not going to live that much longer, if even a couple of years, probably. So it's like, I don't know if this stuff gives false sense of security almost to some extent, because it's like the person using it just wants to get told what the result is and why it's worthwhile. They don't want to have to do the research.
Yeah.
So if they are thinking this thing has reduced my biological age by 27 years, it's like, well, shit, I don't even need to take lipid modulating drugs. I don't need to exercise, maybe even. I don't even need to do anything. I just, take this thing. So I don't know. Like, obviously there is more intelligent thought that should go into what you're putting in your body, I think, for somebody who is doing something like this that's largely experimental, but it's hard to overlook some like the biological age stuff is like very, very aggressive to the point of, I think, misleading a little bit in some cases. Because it's like, I don't know, when I look at biomarkers, to me, that's a reliable metric of I at least know atherogenic potential here. I know how well you dispose of glucose. I know how well your body comp reflects with age and trends and top percentile of your, where you're at. But then like, the age stuff, it's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, I think what you're raising is like how do you measure effect?
Yeah.
Like what measures? And you're gravitating towards phenotypic markers, which have the all-cause mortality strength behind them. And we agree. I think everyone concurs that the methylation clocks are not gold, that they're still silver, because they haven't made that bridge to all-cause mortality into clinical outcomes. I think everyone's on the same page there. I think it's an interesting question for this gene therapy. How do you measure effect? And so you're coming from a history where you say, we're looking at muscle, we're looking at these variables, but there's this long list of other effects in the body. Somehow, there was a 30% lifespan extension in mice. And so the question is, do we understand why? And do we have the tools to measure those things? And is the protocol set up properly to capture those things? And it passed our assessment. Is it safe? We thought so. Is it create risk? We don't think so.
What was the resveratrol wrote in the literature like back when it was super hyped up? Was it like, what were the age reductions in those studies? Do you recall?
I don't remember. We've never done resveratrol.
Because it's been disproven in humans, presumably.
And also appropriate for diabetics. Not for anyone who's not diabetic. That's what I understand of it.
Okay. Yeah, it's just like, to me, this seems, I don't know, the gene therapy sounds like, I get you can turn it on, turn it off, etc. But it's like, I don't know, like knowing, I haven't even seen evidence really that in adults inhibiting myostatin is a useful pursuit. Perhaps it is to some degree, but like the real results you see are in utero, seemingly, where you develop like more muscle fibers because of a deficiency, not necessarily a 40-year-old now enhancing my follistatin levels. Obviously there's a process by which you still produce it for a reason. You have limitation of myostatin to facilitate some sort of rate limiting activity. But anyway, it's I guess it just intrigues me. But
I think your perspective is fair. I think it's reasonable. And I think it basically captures where we're at in the state of health, wellness, and anti-aging. I think it really is legit. And so I think reasonable people can come at this from both sides and conclude different things. And then with that conclusion, you can say, are we willing to try it? And at what risk profile? Yes or no? And so I agree with you. Like, it is not the case that this is just straightforward. There's an answer. And honestly, I really feel bad for all of us, because all of us want to be our best selves. And then we go out in the world and we try to identify what is or is not true. And everybody has a different opinion. There's no consensus.
Right.
And then the person's stuck with, what do I do now? Like, how do I choose my person and always go with them? So it's a pretty challenging spot for someone to be in.
Yeah.
And so we've done our best to look at the evidence. We've tried to make good decisions on risk and reward. But we're just really at that stage where no one's acting with 100% certainty.
Right. I might have misspoke earlier on the body fat loss. It was body fat percentage loss of 0.87% and fat-free mass gain of 1.96 pounds. So I just wanted to correct, because I was just pulling the number out from what I remembered. But
so it's like a 2 to 3% muscle gain?
Yeah, potentially. I'd have to read through it more carefully to get the full metrics, but yeah, something of, I don't know how much of it's conflated with, like fat-free mass. I'm sure you're well aware of how that could be finagled, but I think they have a phase 2 trial underway, so that has more promising results potentially. So I guess I'll await what that looks like before and reserve judgment. I would just be relatively cautious about stuff like this. Are there other gene therapies the company does? Like, I know they had mentioned the MD who was sending me this literature said they had some other stuff that they were working on for other gene targets. Is there anything that interests you that they're doing?
Yes, we have 2 others that we're working on with them.
Oh, you're going to do them both?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, pending they pass safety. Yeah. But yeah, so I won't speak on their behalf, but yes, as a team, we love the plasmid delivery model. We love that it's a kill switch with tetracycline. We love that it's an 18-month window of time.
Right.
And so we feel like if things do go wrong, there's a quick kill on stopping them. And then we feel like we can walk into this with some safety. So I think we will probably do 2 more if we meet the thresholds in the coming 6 to 8 months.
What levels of follistatin have you seen since the administration? Have they been decreasing precipitously? Like you said, 18 months interval wise, like how it's supposed to stay in your system and work for that long?
That's right.
And at a steady state concentrate, or it's like peaks and then declines like normal drug therapy?
Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, I believe it's consistent for that duration of time. It has a pretty precipitous decline, but I need to check that.